So now what we're going to do here is we're going to bake the high poly mesh onto the low poly mesh, thus creating several normal maps, but in the end we'll construct it into one final normal map in Photoshop. Excuse me. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to use Maya's transfer maps function. Basically, I'm just going to take each object separately and bake a normal as we go. So what you want to do is I'll close it right here. It's under rendering, under this little menu right here. And then you go up to lighting and shading, and it's called transfer maps. And this dialog window opens up. Clear all. You have your target mesh and source mesh. And you just click add selected on the low poly, which will be the target mesh. And you'll see several things there. One is you have output UVW map, display, and search envelope. The output should be map 1, which will normally be your diffuse. Display will default say mesh, but you can say envelope or both in the drop down menu there. Both will show you the envelope, which will be highlighted red. Will be highlighted red, and then the search envelope is a percentage of how far you want the envelope away, the shell away from the actual low poly mesh and high poly. You'll adjust these. You'll adjust the search envelope on an object-to-object basis, depending on the detail and the shape of it. So next, what you want to do is you'll select the high poly, smooth it out, and hit add selected under source mesh. And then these output maps that I just circled there, the 7 spheres you see, those are the types of maps that you can do. You have normal, which we will be doing displacement, otherwise known as a height map, diffuse map, shaded map, alpha, ambient, or occlusion, as it's also known as, and then a custom one. Like I said, we will be doing normal today, and you see it's already selected underneath. The more maps you do at the same time, the longer it will take. So we've picked normal, and you name a normal map. You can hit the folder and browse to where you want. Then what you want to do is go into Maya Common Output. This is where you'll change your texture size. You can see map width and map height. You can also check off keep aspect ratio, among other things. One thing you'll want to know, you'll want to adjust is the seam size, fill texture seams. What that is the edge padding. I will add a couple extra pixels on the outer edges of the UVs. This allows it, because of seams and how it's unfolded, to blend together. You won't get a dark line as you see sometimes if you haven't changed that number. There's also mental, very common output that you can change depending on what you're using. Same things in there that you change. So I proceeded to bake it. I've cut out some of the video of waiting there for the hourglass. Normal mapping can take a while, and if you're trying to do an intricate object at once, you might as well go take a break, get a drink, get a coffee. So you'll see me jump around here, but it actually is taking me longer than you see in the video. But I didn't think you'd need to see just the hourglass sitting there. So I'm just moving along here, renaming objects as I go. I like using the file type Targa. That's what I've always used. We use PNGs at work for the final texture output, but for now, Targa is always a good one. So what I do is I also check things in Photoshop. You zoom in here, there's a bit of green there, and that's a bit of an anomaly. So what we'll do is we're going to try to rebake it here, just to check things out, make sure it was smoothed, that the UVs are right. I'm going to change the search envelope number here and try it again. Chances are it's probably going to gonna look the same sometimes. It's just sometimes Maya gives you these weird artifacts which you can just paint out very easily in Photoshop. Any 3D package isn't going to give you perfect normals. Um, you're going to have to do some adjustment. Otherwise, it looks good. That green can either be UVs that are doubled up on each other, and or it's where that particular object goes into is jammed into another object. Um, Again, it can be painted out. It's not a big deal. So what I'm doing is the sides here. I'm just going to bake it up. Just make sure it's got both default Lambert on it. Just covering all the bases. Um, yeah, it looks good. Make sure the high poly is within the low poly. Change the search envelope here. Rename it. It's usually the same process over and over and over again. So we're just going to bake it here. There's the hourglass. And thanks to video editing, we're done. That piece probably would have taken a few more minutes to bake out. So we'll move on to another piece, another simpler piece here. Select the high poly, hit smooth, which is shortcut 3. The number 3, sorry. Select low poly, make it the target mesh. Change the search envelope. Change the name in the normal map there. It's all going to the same folder, so I don't need to keep directing it to a particular folder on my desktop here. Bake. I'm going to try, just going to hide it there. Let's do the little base piece here. Periodically with the more detailed pieces, or maybe more intricate pieces, I will check them in Photoshop to make sure they're turning out. But simple things like, you know, three-sided polygon rectangles, you know, with a face missing, don't really need to keep checking those out in Photoshop. So I've hit bake here, and I'm going to just double check. Okay, everything's gonna select it here again. Just unsmooth it, hide it. Everything checked out. So move on to the spindle here. Let's smooth it out. Take the low poly, clear all, add selected. Clear all on the source mesh, which is a high poly. Hit select, hit add select. Change the name. A good naming system is advised. It just keeps lets you know what normal map is what, because you tend to get a lot when you do it this way. In the end, it'll be all one normal map, and you call it, you know, whatever, subway entrance or something along those lines. But for now, just come up with some sort of naming system. So I did that, cleared it out there. All right, on to the top railing piece here. With this design, I'm going to have to separate it into 2 pieces and bake it twice. For the purpose of it just won't bake right. Maya, 3D Max, anything won't be able to comprehend the depth that is needed to be baked here. Basically, when Maya is baking your normal map, it's looking at your object on only one angle. So sometimes you'll need to extrude out, scale out the edges, the back edges of some of your objects, or shrink them to kind of get a slope. Even though there isn't in your model in the end, it's able to calculate the depth then a lot more clearly than it would if you just left those lines straight. You'll see what I mean in a moment. So just selecting my my high polys here, showing you I've separated them into pieces. Just going to hide what I don't need here. I'm just going to bake this on a flat plane, because that's basically what it is in the model. So you can see here in the top view that I've scaled out those edges at the back to give it a sloped look, even though it's not built that way, just so Maya can calculate the depth of this design a little better. So what I'm going to do is, when you're baking this straight onto a plane, I like to bring this plane in front of the object, just ahead of it. You don't want the object poking through all that much. Just going to get another view here, just make sure to squeeze it in there. Go to my transfer maps here, and I'm just going to clear all and add selected. Take my high poly, smooth it out, add select on source mesh. I'm going to change the envelope here to basically 0.1. You can see here I've changed it to both. This is where you can see the envelope along with the mesh. And it's pretty much right on top of it, so we're good to go here. I'm just going to browse over to where I want this normal map to be saved. Change it to Targa. It defaults to TIFF. There we go, and I'm just going to make sure I've got everything here. Just double check that I'm saving it in the right place. Sometimes you'll end up, you'll notice that you won't. So everything's checked out, 2048. All my texture seams, I'm actually going to knock down to 0 because you don't want anything spreading out on this piece, because there is no UV seams around this plane. You'll understand what I mean here in a second. Everything worked out. Let's go to Photoshop to make sure we get a nice crisp design. Look at that. We can just alpha that out and then place it on top of the appropriate piece later on when we're making our texture. So we'll just zoom in here a bit more and show you what it looks like. Back to our model here. I'll just delete that face. Delete that object. And hide the design. That object was just a copy. It was just meant for the actual baking of the normal on it. So I'm selecting my other two pieces here, which the design normal will go on top of this when I'm done. So again, source mesh, add selected. I'm going to turn on the envelope here. You can see it glowing red. That's your envelope, or your cage if you're a Max user coming over to Maya. You can adjust it like in Max by pulling points. I'm putting my texture seams, my fill texture seams back in here. Just because now we are dealing with a seamed object that can show up. So I've just hit bake here, and I'll show you actually, this is pretty much real time. It's about cut in half, so you can see how long it takes. So just click bake. This type of object maybe, might take you a couple minutes. Ambient occlusion maps take a lot longer to do because you're doing it as one whole object. So that one worked out. We moved on to the light fixture. Might have to do this in two pieces. We're going to find out here. I've renamed it. I've added it to the source and target. I've changed the fill texture seams, and we hit bake. Boom, it's done. That was a fast one. Let's check it out. It looks like it worked. So just going to hide those. Go back in with my outliner here. Select the next pieces, which is the light bulb. This should be a pretty straightforward bake. It's only a low poly cube. I've got double up there. Add select. Clear all. Add select again on the source mesh. Rename it. Everything is kosher. 2048s. Hit bake. Boom, it's done. Let's close that one. Let's open that one. See where we're at. So you can see there it worked out pretty good. Again, just going to go in, select the next piece, and which is going to be the light post here. This one's a little more tricky because things are tapered in. Some pieces stick out way further. So the envelope is going to have to be a little bit bigger than normal. Just hit bake. I've added everything to the appropriate places. And again, this is it's a bigger object, so it's going to take much longer. There we go. Let's check it out in Photoshop. And we zoom in here. Everything looks good. There's that green again up there where I said that just means that it's that part of the model is jammed into another piece of geometry. Not to worry. So there we go. Everything looks actually pretty good on that one. So back, there's the cage again. There's both. I'm adjusting it to basically 0.5 on this one. Like I said, it's an object-to-object basis on the search envelope percentage. So I'm renaming it. Still all 2048s. Always doubles upscale your texture 200% than what will be the final output to. So this in game would end up being a 1024. So there we go, baked it. Let's just test it out in Photoshop. There we go. There's some weirdness happening right there, but you can paint that out. Maybe I'll try it again here. Just double checking the envelopes as close as I could probably get it. Let's just fill texture seems alright. Got everything. I'm just double checking here. Hit bake again. Let's as you can tell, it's still working. Excuse me. So there we go. Let's open up in Photoshop. Just for a quick look. Find it. Okay, this baked a little better. What I'll end up doing is just those little anomalies at the bottom. I'll just paint out. But actually, I'm going to do once more here. Just change the search envelopes. It takes some finesse when you're baking high poly things, even if it looks like the simplest object. Sometimes it'll give you a bit of a hassle. So there we go. It finally worked out. Much cleaner line. I tweaked some UVs there along the way. Some were crooked, and that's what was happening. So I moved on. Just this simple sign. It's just rectangular, so it's not a tough one. There you go. Hide those. Move on to the front part of the subway entrance. We got a TV here. Oh, I've just noticed that the high poly has been moved a bit. So we'll just get in here, select these verts, just move that out to match up with the low poly better. So there we go. I got my low poly, there's my high poly, smooth it out. Clear all, add that selected as source mesh. Your target mesh again is your low poly. There's the envelope. It's kind of, I'm going to rename this. It's a TV. Everything's good. Texture seams are in there. Let's hit bake. I think it will turn out pretty good. So let's just double check. Well, see what we have here again was faces. In this case, they were on top of each other. Duplicate face. So just move that out of the 0 to 1. Rebake it. Let's change the search envelope a bit bigger. We'll hit bake, and the green. Oh, forgot to hit bake there. And we'll double check again. It should look alright. See, there we go. The green is gone. If you ever get that, that's the one thing to check first, is to make sure that there's no overlapping faces. Because like I said earlier, it will cause havoc with your normal bake. So again, I'm just going through the process of search envelope, viewing it, adjusting it, naming the object, naming the normal, and all the other settings should be the same. Really, the only thing you're changing at this point is the search envelope and the name. So again, simple object. Paint those normals out later just to make that a straighter green line, purple lines, things in there. In the end, sometimes you'll find that just if it's a straight line and Maya didn't carry it all the way across, it's much faster for you just to do it yourself. So just and smoothing, hiding those objects. We'll move on to the lower sign. Oh, looks like I forgot to add some an edge loop in there before. Fix that. We'll go in. We'll bake it. Let's try it out in Photoshop here. And we're good to go. So again, like before, just move on to new object. Hide the old ones, go to the outliner, select the low poly and high poly version of whatever object. Hit shift. I hit caps lock then shift H. It's shift plus capital H to show selected. So I've just renamed it, and forgot. Yeah, everything. Oh, there we go. So the envelope's a little big. Move it in a bit. Hit bake. Done. Almost. There we go. Excuse me. Just again, look in Maya. I mean, in Photoshop. Very simple object. Probably didn't even need to check it. So unsmooth that. Hide it. Again, pick another object. Go to the outliner. Pick another object. We're now moving on to the pole. Again, select the high poly, add it to source mesh. Select the low poly, add it to target mesh. Make sure everything's right. Change the name. Make sure you do this because you don't want to be saving over your normals. So there's the search envelope. I think it's a pretty good setting. So we'll hit bake. Go to Photoshop. Open this bad boy up. See how it turned out. So there we go. Looked pretty good. Unsmooth, hide, outliner, select new object. We want to bake. And we got the pole base here. It's got a little bit of design on it like the pole did. I'm going to just try the bake here on just the default I had set for search envelope. See if we get lucky and it turns out good. And did not. There's some weirdness going on down at the bottom there. And some green that shouldn't be happening. This could be just angled UVs, crooked UVs. So we'll go back in here. And the search envelope might be freaking out a bit too. So we're just going to take a look at the envelope here, and as you can tell, there is it's not the right shape. So what we're going to do here is adjust the search envelope to basically encapsulate the pole base, but the same distance all the way around. Just scale these into a straight line. Move these around. Change my song, and yeah, move those ones down. These ones shouldn't be diagonal. We'll just straighten those ones out. It was just calculating that little bevel edge there, and that's why it sloped the envelope out. So there, that should do her. Maybe I move that down a bit. Those top edges, top corners are kind of hard. Everything looks pretty good, although switch to another view, to the side, do the same thing, move everything in, scale it, so they're all nice and straight. Then use the W key to get your manipulator. R is scale and E is rotate. There we go. Should look there. That's looking much better. So we'll just make sure it's named right. We'll do another version of it. We'll hit bake, and let's go to there's Photoshop. Let's open that guy up and see how it turned out. And yeah, it turned out good. I know it was kind of fast there, but it turned out nice. It was all just to do with the search envelope and it being all crooked, being calculated wrong to begin with. And thankfully, you get some manual control. So what we've got now is that was the last piece that we need. I'm just going to select all the high poly pieces, and what we're going to do now is bake the occlusion. And this can take a while. This is more of a you hit bake and you walk away for for a coffee break or maybe lunch. Depending on the settings you use, this can take a few hours to bake out. So there we go. That's just the high poly, and we'll place everything we need. So we've got our high poly and low poly here. So what we're going to do is we're going to open up transfer maps under the render tab and lighting under lighting and shading tab. Sorry. And there we go. Transfer maps again. Now we're going to remove the normal map and add the ambient occlusion map. We're going to name it correctly. Going to open up here. Go to one that I'm just going to save over top of. Then we go change it to Targa. There it is. Actually, I'm just going to double check here just to make sure that I'm not saving over one for something else. Okay, yeah, that's everything's checked out. So there we go. There's the one we're going to name. Yep. The occlusion rays. I'm going to pump these bad boys up. You need a pretty good computer. Thankfully, the one I'm using will be able to handle this. So we've got everything set up. 2048. Occlusion rays are set to, I believe I have them 32. There's the envelope. The envelope's huge, so let's knock that down to 0.1. There we go. And well, we forgot to add the source mesh, which is the high poly. So it's going to select the low poly and then shift drag, and that selects the opposite, the inverse. So there we go. Hit bake, and this shouldn't take too long, hopefully. And then what we'll do is we'll check it out in Photoshop. So here we have our low poly, and we're going to go to Photoshop now. Here, open up the occlusion that took probably about an hour, hour and a half to bake in Maya. Just had to let it go over lunch. There it was. Didn't mean to close it. There we go again. You can see there's some anomalies, some weirdness happening. That you can clean up in Photoshop. There's also some things that because I'm duplicating objects, I'm going to have to get rid of in the occlusion map because it just won't look right shadow-wise and everything. So there is some Photoshopping that needs to be done here. And I redid it. I rebaked it actually. And as you can tell, this is the new one as I'm writing down. Just to let you know that I fixed it. I went in, I upped the rays a bit, I checked all my UVs, and I got a much better bake. Again, it took about an hour and a half or so, but it did. So I'm just going to apply it here just to make sure everything checks out. There we go. And you know, there's some problems, but actually it looks pretty good. I'm pleasantly surprised. As you can tell here, the spindles, and there's some weirdness there that I'll have to fix in Photoshop, but that goes without saying. Um, with your normal maps and your occlusion maps, usually you're going to have to fix some things. This stuff's not perfect, you know. Like, 3D programs can only do so much before you finally have to to make some changes, do some edits. So what I'm just going to do here is I'm going to select and lay out all my spindles and get my final low poly, so I can start texturing this bad boy. So I've got 3 different ones here that I've laid out my UV unwrap. So I'm just going to select the first one, dupe extract, and then just Control D and move this guy along. And the occlusion map I've got turned on, and it helps me. Excuse me. It helps me line it up with that nice shadow. So I'm just going to move along here. Bacon occlusion maps takes, like I said, a long time to do. Actually, as a I'll have to delete. I'll have to cut these faces in half on these spindles because they're going right into the sign and will pop out on the other side. But yeah, bacon occlusion maps takes a long time to do. It's one of those things where if you got lunch or dinner or you're going to bed, let her set her up and let her run overnight. Um, Especially Maya and Max. X normal can handle um, a lot more polys than Max and Maya can, and you can crank the rays, occlusion rays, right up. But with some tweaking here, I got the one from Maya to look pretty good. Like I said, though, I'm still gonna have to do some Photoshop into it to omit some parts that are that are showing shadows where they shouldn't. It's just the name of the game. Like I said, I've duplicated some of these objects to save on texture space. So you have to sacrifice things somewhere, and it's on the occlusion map. And generally, you want to keep the occlusion map at a minimum on your texture because you're going to have real-time lighting, and it will look funny if there's this already baked in light. And you can tell on these spindles that I'm going to have to erase some of the occlusion, some ambient occlusion on it, because they were baked behind that. Oh, excuse me, I apologize for the yawn. Baked behind that sign. But again, all this is pretty minor. My one kind of nice thing, and it's actually just kind of an accidental bonus. If you don't crank the occlusion rays right up, which I highly doubt unless you got a supercomputer, it gives you this kind of noisy finish to your occlusion, and I actually kind of like it because it gives this kind of real world grittiness to it, whereas some of the other programs give me a nice smooth finish, smooth shadows, and those just don't really exist, on a city street. So it kind of works out, which I like. What I'm doing here, I'm just combining all the objects into a final low poly. My apologies again for the yawn. So, yep, there we go. I have, well, somewhat my low poly. What I'm doing now is, here we go, I've just selected everything, and I'm just going to create my low poly. Just collapse it down, combine them. And I'll collapse all these groups. That's where the high poly remains. Just name this LP for low poly. And now what I'm going to do is apply the occlusion map to it again. Right after I delete the sides, because I'm going to duplicate the side over, and since I'm trying to basically finish up, I'll have a final low poly here, that which at this point, even before texturing, I would export out and take it into our engine to place, give it to the level, to the layout guy, so he's got something in place, and we just make sure everything's to scale and proportional. So what I'm doing now is I'm selecting the completed low poly side, and I'm gonna dupe extract it, keep the original faces, delete history, then dupe extract. And what I'm gonna use here is actually the special duplicate special. It's under edit where duplicate is, and what this does, you can use mirror geometry, but what happens there is it's not as easy to use as duplicate special. So what you got here is you want to make it not an instance. An instance, what will happen is uh, basically, I'll just show you here. You want to make it a copy, but if you do an instance and you hit apply, what happens is whatever you do to the original will happen to what you just duplicated. So you don't want that. You want a copy. And in scale, in the z-axis, you want to put -1, and this will flip it for you. Copy makes it its own entity, its own object. So there's the scale right there. I've knocked in -1 so that it knows to make a copy and rotate it and flip it. So I just delete the original. Now I've got a nice copy here. And just move that off. I'm just going to apply again the occlusion material, the occlusion texture. So we can see the final look here, and just adjust this new side into its right spot. Excuse me. What sometimes happens is it creates an alpha. All you want to do is just delete that connection from the texture to the shader ball, and then middle mouse click over top of those arrows, and it gives you a little menu, and you just hit color for this purpose. So there we go. Like I said, there's some weirdness with the occlusion that that I'll have to adjust in Photoshop, but you don't really use the occlusion all that much. You can use it for different things like dirt maps too, and dust maps. But you can see there's the little shadow. I'll just fix that up. I'll just adjust this so it fits. But overall, the work I have to do to the occlusion map really isn't that much. It might take about, say, 10 minutes in Photoshop to get this occlusion map looking. So there we go. We are finished part 2. In part 3, what I will be doing is creating the final texture for the subway entrance. I will also take all the normals that I baked and combine them into one normal map, and I will also create a specular map for the entranceway, subway entrance. I hope you enjoyed part 2, and will join me for part 3 on cgtoots.com.